Hit record. Okay. I think we are on. Okay, so welcome everybody. This is the October meeting of the KFNA Board of Directors. Welcome. Thanks for joining. It looks like we do have quorum, so we can move forward. It doesn't look like we have any community members in here yet. So I don't feel like we need to go. I guess maybe we do record these, so we probably should go around and do introductions anyway. So why don't we do introductions anyway, just in case for the folks who are going to watch this after. So I will quickly introduce myself, Chris DeRoche, Board President, and I live on the 4400 block of Grand. And then if you can call on somebody after you go, I will call on Sarah Cheetah.
Hi, I'm Sarah Cheetah. I live on 36th in Pillsbury and Board Vice President. I will call on Alice.
Alice, you're muted.
You're mute, Alice.
Sorry about that. Hi, I'm Alice Johnson. I live on the 4300 block of Grand, and I am the board treasurer.
Can you call on someone else?
I'll call on BJ.
Hello, everyone. My name is BJ Titus. I live on the 3800 block of First Avenue, and I am the treasurer. And I will toss it over to the other Chris.
Hi, I'm Chris Hall. I live on 36 and First Avenue, and I am a board member. I'll pass it to Becky.
Hi, I'm Becky. I live on 4000 block of Garfield, and I'm a fairly new board member. I'll call on Jerome.
Hey, it's Jerome. I'm Jerome Drankin. I live on the 3900 block of Pleasant, and I'm relatively new. And have I heard from, how about David Robbins?
Hey, David Robbins, board member. I live on 44th and Wentworth. And I think, Dave, are you the only other one to go?
Yep. Hey, I'm David Searle, board member, and live on 38th and First. Pass it to you, Chris.
Awesome. Thanks, everyone. Sarah, could you introduce yourself as well? Sarah LR. Sorry. And tell us where you are.
Yes, Sarah Linus Robinson. I serve the board as the executive director. If I'm echoing, I'm in a bathroom in Cody, Wyoming, on my way to visit my son in Montana for MEA. So I'll probably drop my video and audio for as much of the meeting as I can and just listen.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. So now we'll move into the community forum. It does not look like we have any community members, or no one's in the waiting room right now. So I guess I'll just maybe open it up to the board for a couple of minutes. I know we're still, I think Tane is going to be joining us here shortly. And so we have a couple of minutes maybe to talk, because we all are community members as well. So I guess maybe there's a couple minutes here to chat or provide any updates that anyone has.
And Chris, can you remind people about who Tane is and what he was doing?
Yeah. So Tane was at our board meeting. What was it? Two board meetings ago ish. And we had helped. We had partnered with him and passed a resolution to help fund. He is a part of the Theater of Public Policy to fund a program that they were running called Uncomfortable Conversations. It was about race and meeting with kind of bringing in different people to kind of facilitate a process to talk about race, talk about race, especially in the aftermath of the killing of George Floyd. And so we as an organization helped host and bring that forward with him. And there was actually what came out of our meeting with him and was kind of pushed by board members was kind of thinking about what are the next steps and what are the follow-ups to that. And so they had actually, Tane, I believe, had actually put on kind of kind of follow-up conversations after those initial conversations. So the goal of tonight is for them to him to come provide some recap on how those went, what was the attendance, how the conversations went, and for opportunity for board members to ask questions, and then kind of to figure out maybe if there's some opportunities for us as a board to maybe participate in some of those kind of similar facilitated conversations. So I don't know if there's anything else anyone wanted to add on that. So thank you, BJ. The one thing that I just wanted to add quickly for the community forum, I was going to maybe do this at the end, but it probably is just as appropriate to do it now, is as everybody knows, we have neighbors who are currently residing in MLK Park. We have house neighbors who are kind of helping those who are there, supporting them in many different ways, whether that's finding housing, whether that's providing meals, whether that's providing different services. And so there's been some really great things that have happened over the last couple of weeks. Neighbors who live here have helped facilitate some of those living in the park transitioning out of that into more kind of stable housing situations. So that's been really, really exciting. I believe we have about 4 or 5 folks who have, maybe 4, 5, 6 folks who have transitioned out of the park in the last couple of weeks, which is really, really great. We're going to provide a recap of some of the stuff that we helped support a few weeks back, but I think that that's just something I heard from some of the neighbors in the last couple of days that has been happening. So is there anything else anyone else would like to share during a community forum section of the evening?
I have like a question, sort of. So I am working on a school project, and this semester we're kind of evaluating county roads and how they can be safer for pedestrians and cyclists. And I managed to kind of lean my team into working on Lyndale Avenue South. And part of the project is going to be kind of getting community members to, like, we don't really know what we're going to do for this part yet. We're just trying to figure out how to get a feel for how the community feels about Lyndale, walking it, crossing it, biking, not on it, I hope. And if you have ideas or strong opinions, get in touch.
That's awesome. Sarah, did you have something?
Oh, I just was raising my hand because I have strong opinions about Lyndale Avenue South. But I think, yeah, Sarah's putting in here what I was thinking, like if the e-news is a way to reach people, are you wanting to mainly connect with people from Kingfield, or is it like a region-wide project, or who are you specifically targeting from a geographical perspective?
Well, we're studying Lyndale from 20th to 50 whatever. So kind of whoever is within like a 15-minute walk from Lyndale. So I would probably reach out to multiple neighborhood organizations. So I don't know if it's going to be a survey or like a Zoom meeting or whatever. It's just like, but it'd be cool if anyone had ideas, and so I could bring it up in like a team meeting, because we don't know what we're doing yet.
One idea I just have off the top of my head that I've been thinking a lot about, with as someone who has a 4.5-year-old who will be going now with the kind of the school district shift to Barton and has to cross Lyndale, but also our 4.5-year-old like loves biking, bikes to school now next to me, right? But like that's a big kind of fear of mine right now, is how where you cross, how you cross, you know, is it cross or just cross at the light on 43rd, all that sort of stuff. So I would think interacting with especially parents now who maybe Barton is their new school but live in Kingfield and have to kind of think about how they get there. I think that would be a really interesting perspective.
Thank you.
Yeah. Also, I think it would just be fun to stand out there. You can stand out on 44th and watch me try to sprint across with a stroller at least like once every other day. So you can see how I do it.
Maybe like standing at a corner and like counting people.
Seeing how long people wait, right? I think
Yeah.
I've waited there for 10 minutes trying to get across. Yeah. Cool. Any other quick community forum items that anyone would like to share? Okay, great. So I will thank you. It looks like Tane's joined us. Welcome. So I will call the meeting to order officially. And can we get a motion to approve the consent agenda, which involves the approval of September's minutes and also the approval of this agenda, October's agenda?
So moved.
Can we get a second?
Second, Sarah T.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye or thumbs up or hand up.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed and abstentions. Cool. That's great. So we'll jump. I know you just joined, Tane, but maybe we'll just jump into it right now. We kind of gave a little bit of a setup of some of the stuff that we had kind of collaborated with you on and the goal. But I think really what we were looking for tonight was just to kind of go like, how'd it go? Love to hear some feedback, and we would, love to hear like what your guys' thoughts are for this sort of thing going forward. So I'll turn it over to you, and then I think we'll have maybe an opportunity for board members to kind of ask questions after. But
yes.
It's all you.
And Tane, can you do a quick introduction for those who might watch this meeting back later?
Absolutely. Hi, everybody. My name is Tane Danger. I'm the co-founder of Danger Boat Productions and the Theater of Public Policy. Use he, him pronouns. And I'm here because we did a partnership with you all in the Kingfield neighborhood as well as the Lyndale neighborhood on this program that we started earlier this summer in 2020 called Let's Get Uncomfortable, which is a space to talk about race and how to be more anti-racist. And so, first of all, most important, thank you all for supporting that work and making that happen. I won't go over the whole presentation that I gave when I came and spoke to you originally, but earlier this year, we were really trying to figure out how can we be helpful and useful in this moment. And, one of the things that we heard a lot is, and I actually keep hearing this over and over again, is that we need to normalize having these kinds of conversations around race. I've taken to saying that I want anti-racism to become just as systemic as racism is. And one of the things that I hear again calls a lot and was part of the impetus for making this program start is from people of color saying to me and to other of my white friends, like, hey, white people, you need to do a better job talking to each other about some of these things because we're tired of having to do it for you, which is they are often much more tactful and kind than that, but that's often the gist of what they're saying. So that was the notion of what we did. You in partnership with the Lyndale neighborhood, provided funding for us to have facilitators to lead a total of 6 conversations, these Let's Get Uncomfortable conversations, which just to outline, were broken into, there's 3 levels that we developed with the Let's Get Uncomfortable. There's a level 1, which was what we called a place to start. And it was really designed as like an entry level for folks who maybe have not talked about these issues or these things before. It makes them really uncomfortable, but they're willing to jump in for the first time. Level 1 was designed for those folks. Then we had what we called level 1.5, which was Let's Get Uncomfortable. Now 60% more uncomfortable. And so it was a similar structure where we were having a conversation. We were facilitating small group conversations, but we were asking more probing questions, more uncomfortable questions. So in the first session, maybe we were asking things like, why is being anti-racist important to you? Can you articulate that as a value statement of how it lines up with other values in your life? In level 1.5, we pushed farther and we said, can you talk about ways that you personally potentially have benefited from your race or your racial identity? Can you talk about things that you personally feel like you would be comfortable or willing, even if uncomfortable, to sacrifice or change about your life in order to help dismantle some of these systems? Then we had what we called level 2, how to be a better ally. And that was led by, and is led by, one of our performers of color, Duck Washington. And that one, as opposed to the first 2 were really designed to be small group conversations amongst peers, sort of, and for folks to learn from each other. And then level 2 was Duck really leading training for folks that included several tools that he developed, as well as a set of role-playing activities for folks where you are actually practicing things like, okay, you are at Thanksgiving and your uncle says something about those people in Minneapolis. What do you do? Like, how do you interject or pick that conversation up? Or you work at a place and you notice they are never hiring people of color. How do you actually broach that kind of a conversation and make that part of your work? So that was that level 2 conversation. And because of the support that you all provided, we were able to do 2 of each of those. They were really great. I mean, I honestly and I might have said a version of this when I was here before, but this is a challenging time. 2020 is a hard year for a lot of reasons. And in all sincerity, and I'm not just saying that, like, one of the things that has sort of been a light for me and has given me some hope and energy over the last several months is doing these sessions. They're hard and they are uncomfortable at times, but the fact that dozens of people are willing to come out and spend time digging into this and engaging with each other. And then at the end, we always ask people to make commitments for what they're willing to do next and they're committing to do next. I'll just share a few data points and then a few anecdotal things, and then mostly leave it open for folks to ask questions. We did about half and half with this set. Half of them we did in-person outdoors at Kingfield Park. I'm forgetting the name of the park now that we did it in Lindale. And then we did some of them on Zoom. It was interesting. The dynamics do change depending on in-person or online. There's actually an interesting thing. This is just a fun fact. Like, some people really liked the online because it was sort of so, like, they were participating, but they just felt like, well, I'm on my home turf, so I could talk and I could be myself in a way maybe that felt different than if they were going somewhere. Also, one of the interesting things in doing it online is that, yes, while the majority of people who participated in these were from either Kingfield or Lindale or maybe the Tangletown or some of the other surrounding neighborhoods, we also got people who heard about this and then joined from way out far. There was one in particular I remember with one of the Kingfield Lindale ones that we did where we had 2 people join us from Thief River Falls. And I had one that we did and somebody joined us from Iowa. And it was so interesting to have those folks in the discussion because they and the folks who were here from Minneapolis, we're all there for the same reason, but the realities on the ground were different and the ways that they thought about it and approached it were different. And I see the question here. And so having somebody from Thief River Falls, talk about, this program is really important for us and is a part of, individually my work on this, because our community is more overtly racist at times, like than places maybe where you are from. You know, it's not a matter of whether you have a Black Lives Matter sign up or not. It's more like a matter of, you know, whether you go to the gas station and they like harass people of color. Like that's sort of sometimes and I don't in any way want to paint a picture that like all of rural Minnesota is somehow racist or whatnot, but the instances and some of the stories that they shared were just like valuable and interesting. And similarly, folks from Minneapolis, you know, learn things, I think, from the folks in greater Minnesota sometimes. We had all of these up on our website that people were able to come and join. And so that's how people heard about it. We had about, I think that the final count was about 96 people total who participated in this set of 6 sessions. As I said, majority were from the neighborhoods. Some of them were from farther away. I will say we had the wide range of folks who participated in these. Like everyone from literally like on multiple occasions, I would have people participate in one of these sessions who would say, you know, I've just never really talked about this before with people. Like this is the first time that I am sort of in there. And sometimes they would be like, you know, I've read the articles or I, you know, read the books or whatnot, but just, I don't talk to anybody about this because it just doesn't come up in my life. So I was in a way that I feel like I'm comfortable talking about it. And so it was neat, or I don't know if they used the word neat, but they said, you know, it was important to me to have a chance or an opportunity to try actually just talking about this. And then from there, you had all the way to the other end of folks coming in and saying, oh, I've been doing this work for years. Like I've been setting up the diversity and inclusion monthly work group at my employer, and I've been doing X, Y, and Z, and I kind of wanted to be part of this to talk about it. And again, those two groups of people talking to each other was another really cool outcome of this, because, and I don't know where everyone else is on this, but sometimes I'll speak for myself, when you get really deep in something, when you're really passionate about it and you've been working on it forever, you sometimes maybe kind of forget what it's like to be just starting or just at the beginning of that thing. And so talking to those folks again, I think I saw this happen over and over again, where people would be generous and empathetic with folks who were at a very different place in this journey than they were. And I think that that's a good muscle to practice. We got the feedback that we got was very generally positive. We'd sent surveys out afterwards asking people where they were in terms of their comfort in talking about and engaging with anti-racism before a session versus after a session. And it generally moved, I think, about 1.5 points on a 6-point scale for folks, which may not seem like a ton, but it was like a solid movement for every single person. We did, you know, one of the things that we heard people say was, oh, well, I want more. I want to do more of this, which we're like, great. That's kind of the point, like, is that this is a place to start. So if this is sort of whet your appetite for this, that's fabulous. And then the last thing that I'll say is that, you know, I don't know, this is maybe just bragging rights for Kingfield and Lindale, which is that you all were the first neighborhoods to partner with us on this. But since then, we've had a whole batch of neighborhoods and other cities partner with us and want to do this. So we've done, now we partner with St. Louis Park. We are doing a batch we did one earlier this week with Highland Park in St. Paul. We're doing 3 more later this month in other parts of St. Paul. We did a set of them with a group in West Central Minnesota and Greater Minnesota. Ramsey County is talking with us about doing a set in different parts of Ramsey County. And so there is a desire and a need for this. I promise this is the last thing I'll say, and it's just a little bit of like, I don't know, a warning or a thing to just note the importance of keeping the energy or the focus on this. I will be totally transparent. We have seen that people are doing it less than they did at the beginning, right? And this is totally predictable. This happens every single time, right? Where something awful and terrible happens around race and racism, everybody all of a sudden realizes this is really important. And then a lot of stuff starts to draw our attention to other things, and people move and they get distracted, or they just start paying attention to other stuff. We are committed to continuing doing these as long as people are showing up at all and they do this. But this is just to say, I am taking this sort of as a personal charge, and our group as like a professional charge. Like, you have to keep calling this question. You have to keep saying like that this is important, because if you just sort of like leave it to people, sometimes there's so much happening that people do just sort of drift off and they forget. And we can't, I say this at the end of every session, we can't let that happen. It's just too important to let that happen. So with that, that was a lot of me blabbering. I don't know if I answered any questions ahead of time, but please, anybody who wants to know anything, let me know.
Awesome. Thank you. Does anyone have any, I have a couple questions, but does anyone have any questions they want to kick it off with? Pertain? Any? I can, so you mentioned like people wanting, like one of the things that people said was they wanted more, right?
Yeah.
Like they want to progress, right?
Yeah.
This was specifically set out as a program that was like, I don't say an introduction, but was like,
yeah,
get in, get uncomfortable,
yeah,
get ready to do something, to do more, right?
Yeah.
What do you, this is maybe like, for those who have gone through this, like, what do you see as the more? And maybe what do you see as the more, both for like you guys and also for like an organization like us in wanting to like support programs like this, and also kind of do our own work? Like, what is the next step? What is the more? And I know it's a lot of different things, but like,
no, it's a really important, it's like the best question. So the more that people wanted was in a couple different spaces. It depended on who it was, what they meant by, I think, and this came out explicitly in sometimes the surveys. Sometimes when people said they wanted more, it was they wanted to be pushed farther. In which case, like, you know, that's why we kind of had a second and a third level of the things that we were offering. Some people wanted more in terms of give us like the tools for, you know, fixing these like institutional things or whatnot, which I think is really important. You know, one of the points that I made over and over again with these sessions is like, the institutional stuff is super important, right? Like, I'm the head of an organization called the Theater of Public Policy. I totally get why public policy is super important for this, but do not think that like public policy fixes this by itself. Like, and I think that that is a mistake that we have made in the past, of thinking we're going to like pass a law, or we are going to like have some like program that fixes this, when a lot of this work has to be like us looking at ourselves and looking at each other and figuring out how we individually and as a community do better just on a human level. And that is just as, I don't know if it is important. It is absolutely a piece of it that you can't just sort of, I do feel like this is a bigger conversation. Like, sometimes Minnesota, we have this tendency of just saying like, well, somebody like will make a program or pass a law that'll fix this thing. And it's like, no, like that lets all of us off the hook for like what the work that we need to do. In terms of like continuing it, I think that there's a few things that are real. I think one, and this is like, this may sound like overly simple, but I honestly believe it's wildly important, is that we have to like build the spaces where we just talk about this more, and it's like normal and comfortable to talk about it. And I think that to start, that has to be probably curated spaces. So, you know, we either had a lot of people who would come, or who would come and then afterwards create a book club or a discussion group or a neighborhood meetup that they were going to do every month to like engage with these. And again, that may seem sort of like, oh, isn't that nice? Like, it's so sort of hooray. I really do think that, like, as I said before, like, part of this work is normalizing this and making people just get really comfortable having these kinds of conversations so that it doesn't feel like a terrifying thing when, because over and over again, people were like, I distinctly remember this in one of the sessions, somebody talked about, and I kind of alluded to this, like somebody talked about, well, you know, the owner of this local gas station where I live, like, posted this terribly racist thing on Facebook. And I felt like I needed to go confront him about it, but I was scared and I didn't know how. And I was like, this is so great and brave of you to do this. You've also admitted that you, like, never have really talked about race out loud before. So maybe the place to start is not to confront the super racist, like, gas station owner, which is like the highest stakes thing. And maybe it's to, like, get better at talking about this amongst your peers and the people that you're with. And so that then you kind of build that muscle up so that then when something like that happens, you are, like, equipped and have the words that you need to do that work in a way that will be effective and safe for you as well, as opposed to, like, just jumping into, like, the shark infested waters in the first thing that you do. So I think that that's a really big piece of it. The other piece that we hear a lot is people do want, like, tools for when something really bad or problematic happens, like how to engage with that. And that is part of why we created Duck created the How to Be a Better Ally workshop. And I think things like that will continue to be really necessary. And there's an infinite number of, you know, there's other groups that are doing some work like that I would encourage you all to explore. But I think one is just making it so that, like, these kinds of things are just, like, part of the conversation normally, and it doesn't feel like weird or awkward to say, like, yeah, we're going to talk about race because it's, like, super important. And then two is to probably start to develop some more of the tools of, like, how to engage those folks who are more problematic, for a diplomatic term.
Great, thanks. Any other questions? Anyone else?
I don't have a question, but, oh, Becky, were you going to say something? Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I went to all 3 of the sessions. There's something about talking to strangers about it that I think is really interesting, and, you know, you kind of know, or at least I kind of know what my friends think, and we're all sort of on the same page, and we talk and talk and talk, but to hear other people's point of view and to be in a space where you are talking about it with people you don't know is interesting and helpful. I would love to see more of that. I mean, I would go to more things like that. I really liked the 3rd one. I mean, actually, like you said, having the words, I think for a lot of people, for me, and I think other people, I'm so afraid I'm going to say the wrong thing that I just don't say anything. I don't want to offend anyone. So I think it's helpful to get used to talking about it and to try to find those words. And like you said, really to be able to confront people in a way that's productive and useful. That's all.
Thank you.
That's great perspective. I know we have to move along. Is that what you're going to say, Sarah?
I was going to say we have to move on, but I did want to say that although you might have misunderstood, Tane, why we were asking you here, you did offer to lead a session for the board, which I said rain check you on, but I think that we would like to talk about that later this evening and how that could happen. So thank you for that.
Yep. And Sarah T.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I appreciate your openness with telling us about the level of interest, how it kind of started out higher and trailed off a little bit. And I think about that. I mean, I do think about that a lot, the sense of urgency that people feel right after a terrible event. And so I just, I thank you for bringing that up. And I think that's good for us as a board to be thinking about too, is how can we make sure that as a board, we are staying committed and keeping the sense of urgency around anti-racism work. So thank you for being open with us about that.
Yeah. All right. Well, you all, I know, have to move on, but I really can't thank you enough. Like this, this work, I really do feel like in 9 years of running my organization, this is easily some of the most important work that we've done. And on one level, it's very simple. It's, you know, as Becky was talking about, it's people talking to each other, which is sort of the oldest thing in the world. And yet on another level, I think it's wildly profound and needed and important, particularly now in an era of COVID and an era when we are very siloed and don't always talk to people outside our immediate bubbles. So thank you for believing in us and making the commitment to help make this happen. And just to underscore what Sarah said, Executive Director Sarah said, is that, yes, if you all are interested, talk about this later. My team and I would be delighted to come and lead one of these. We've done it with some other board organizations before. You know, Becky, it's different because you do know each other, but I do think that it's valuable and interesting because you do get to, it's a conversation that we just don't always have very often. And hopefully the questions are designed in a way where we get to bring up and talk about and be vulnerable with each other, maybe in a way that we don't always do. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Shane, and thank you for coming and explaining it. And I'm sure we'll be in touch, you know, soon to kind of continue working on this partnership. And we would love, I think personally, I would love to kind of see how that goes with the board, and then you know, think about, you know, you use the term specifically like build the spaces. I think that there would be value in looking at a partnership or somehow that KFNA can support the building of the spaces in our community specifically to continue these conversations so that they don't drop off. So again, thank you for coming, and we'll be in touch, I'm sure. So
okay, thank you all. Bye-bye.
Okay, cool. Thanks, everybody. We will, are there any, I guess, maybe I'll open it up really quickly. Are there any other questions from the board now that Tane is off about that program or about moving forward or ideas on moving forward, anything like that? Thank you, Becky, for sharing your experience with going. I think that's super valuable. Is there anything else anyone wanted to throw in there? Anything from or anything, Sarah, LR, from a organizational standpoint?
I do want to say from an organizational standpoint that the idea of creating spaces to talk about this is really interesting. So we just started a conversation this week with all of our office mates about moving forward with branding the South Nicollet Action Center as a collaboration of the 4 groups that are in there. And we're working on a grant for the Minneapolis Foundation that would be coming in under that umbrella to basically build out the office as a learning lab, which will be virtual until COVID is done, but then would be able to move forward to hold programs like this in the areas of right now. What we're talking about is climate justice and racial justice.
Awesome, thanks. Anyone else have any comments or questions?
I have a question for Becky. How long were the trainings that you went to, and did they differ in length depending on if it was 1, 1.5, or 2? And then thinking about that, if we are having something for the board, kind of thinking about time-wise.
I think I went to 1 in person and then 2 on Zoom, and I think they were about an hour and a half. Maybe a little bit longer than that, but yeah, an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Okay.
I think you could do it in a shorter version. I mean, you could just have less discussion topic, and now that we've all heard from Tane, you know, 1 to 2 times, I think we have a general idea of what it's about. So you could skip some of that intro stuff too to help move it along.
One of the things that we've done in the past is do like, I think we've done these normally at the end of the year. I don't think we did one last year, but is to do like a board retreat sort of thing where we maybe hold a little bit of space for some conversations that we typically don't have space for in terms of the timeline of a board meeting or a committee meeting. So I think that would be a really interesting thing to do as part of some sort of like, whether it's additional, whether we replace a board meeting with it, how we can talk about that further. But I think that would be a kind of setting aside maybe a meeting where we're maybe taking on some of these kind of more discussions in a meeting like that. So I think that's an opportunity. Any other questions or comments? Okay, great. We will move on. The next item on the agenda, and we are on time, the MPRB Southwest Parks Master Plan. In the agenda, you will see a link to the resolution. This is a resolution from me. I've been kind of like periodically over the last, because this is a process that's been going on now for over 2 years, or about 2 years. I've been periodically updating the board with kind of the process. Generally, this is the last of the 5, I believe, service areas in the park system, north, northeast, south, southwest, and downtown of master plan. So pretty much what this is a document that guides the direction for all of the neighborhood parks over the next 20 years. So it's also thinking about vision and recreation and programming a little bit, but the main kind of meat of it is all of these different park plans and what the parks are going to look like, and guiding kind of the expenditures within the parks over the next 20 years. So we went through an 18-month long CAC process, the Community Advisory Committee, which I sat on. It was over 20 meetings, looking at all these parks, figuring out, what is the values, what is the vision, and then throwing kind of those at the design of individual parks. Some stayed fairly similar, some drastically changed. I threw a link into the proposed MLK Park plan in the resolution, so you can see that, as MLK is the only park directly within our community, but you can think about parks like Painter, Lindale Farmstead, Fuller, Phelps, McRae. Those are the kind of ones that are surrounding us a little bit. Kings Highway is another one that was included in this plan. And so you'll get a link to the project page. Where we are currently at in the process is that a draft plan has been written by MPRB staff, kind of unanimously approved by the Community Advisory Committee, which was made up of 18 members, and now is going in front of the Minneapolis Park Board commissioners. And so there has been some, what this resolution is asking is that the board here supports the pretty much the process that the community went through, and the draft plan that has been presented to that was created based on that input. The Community Advisory Committee, the CAC, supported this plan unanimously. And what I'm asking for here is a resolution pretty much that the board supports, is voicing their support for the plan and for the process as well. So that is the resolution. I should also just say I added this at the bottom. The two, I don't know if these, I'm just trying to disclose, these aren't really conflicts of interest. One, I was on the CAC, which I said, and also my consulting firm, the park board is one of my clients. I work for the asset management department, but there's really no, I guess this is up to you guys to decide, but there's really no financial or professional stake of me passing, or of the plan passing the park board. So just wanted to throw that out there. Are there any questions in terms of this resolution, or of the process generally, or of any of the specific plans for the parks?
I have a question. So I know you mentioned that the Community Advisory Committee, is a lengthy process, I know. But can you just give us a brief overview of like who else was on the committee, and who was engaged in the process? And from your perspective, I mean, I'm guessing if you're asking us to support this, you would say that that's like representative of the community and things like that. But can you give us an idea of like the demographics of people who were able to provide feedback during this process?
Yeah, that's a really, really great question. And that's actually kind of gets to the crux of why I'm asking for this resolution. the park board went through a extensive, I'd say there's 3 phases of engagement. The park board went through an extensive community engagement process where they were at every single park. So pre-COVID times, the park board staff was at Painter Park, interacting with folks out in the park who were there. They were at, different kind of events. They were forming, one of the really great things that the park board does in terms of community engagement is like partnering with local, especially like cultural groups, to try to engage specifically with those who maybe like they're going to have a harder time catching via surveys or going out to the park, or kind of some of those more like typical engagement processes. And so that's the first phase of engagement, which is this like extensive, long, year-long process that park board staff went through to proactively and consciously reach those who are typically underinvested in and underreached in engagement processes. The second phase was the CAC process. Those on the CAC are appointed, like I was appointed by 6 neighborhoods, like it was us, Lindale, East Harriet, I think Tangletown, and some other ones. Park board commissioners elect or put people on the CAC. And then there's the staff puts people on the CAC. It's mostly an appointed CAC via staff, elected officials, like council member Jenkins, I believe, had somebody on the CAC as well too, and then community organizations. So that was who was on the CAC. The third phase of engagement is the engagement phase that we're in now, which is exclusively online engagement via written comments on the draft plan. This was my testimony at the last park board meeting, but was the first 2 phases of that engagement really are proactively seeking community's input, are proactively seeking folks who are typically under-reached out to in these processes, and is going to those who are using the parks, who are in the parks, but maybe aren't going to fill out an online survey because they don't really know what this process is. The third phase of engagement, which we're in, is really for, I would say, is for well-connected homeowners who are adjacent to the parks, who are able to mobilize their neighbors, able to connect and say, hey, we don't really want that change. We really don't think an additional basketball court is good for this park, or we really don't want more people here. And that's kind of an exaggeration a little bit, but it's my perception of this third phase of engagement. And what I've been asking the commissioners to do, and what I'm asking, I guess, all of you to do, is to support the plan that was developed via the community, and not let the third phase of engagement, which is the engagement that really favors those who have those connections and have that kind of like typical engagement strength, to be able to change things that were developed via a very long process and really extensive community feedback. So sorry, that's a really long answer to that question, but that's kind of where we're at this point. There really aren't any major amendments that any of the commissioners are proposing, but I think it's really important to voice, as an organization, to voice our support of the process and of an engagement process that actively seeks input from both users of the park and from communities who are typically aren't able to engage in processes like this. Any other questions specifically about the resolution, about the plan, or anything there? I will say that this is going to come up either at the next board meeting. It was at the planning committee this last month. I think it was like a week ago, and it's going to be either coming up at the next board meeting or the meeting after that. Any questions, concerns? Do people feel comfortable? I guess I will just say, do people feel comfortable with this resolution and supporting this plan and this process?
Yes.
Like 1 to 5. Thank you, Sarah. Or thumbs up is the very is the 1 to 2 scale as well too.
Chris, I have another question.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, so that rationale, that explanation that you just gave was super helpful. And I'm wondering if you see value in the resolution indicating more explicitly why we support the community advisory committee process, being that it seems to be very intentionally doing outreach with underinvested in people in the city. Is there value in adding that to the resolution? Or do you think, and others too, please provide feedback, or is the resolution that says that we support the committee, but not explicitly why? I think it's still a very strong statement, but I'm wondering if that rationale is a piece of it as well.
I think that's great feedback, and I would love to provide others. I've provided that feedback specifically to the park board. It wasn't, I guess I wouldn't even say, it wasn't even intentional for me to leave that out. I guess I was just trying to, make it as straightforward as possible. But if that's something that people feel strongly about, like I would love, yeah, that's my feeling as well too. So.
Yeah, I would second that. I feel like the resolution, I mean, is the plan just to put that resolution on the website? I mean, I feel like I wouldn't mind having like a letter addressed to the park board that says, this is why the Kingfield Neighborhood Association supports the plan unanimously recommended by the CAC. I just feel like as drafted, it's not, I mean, it just doesn't go into like the deeper reasons why we think that phase 1 and phase 2 were more, not more, why we trust the CAC after going through phase 1 and phase 2 versus some of the community feedback that is being garnered with phase 3. I just think that might be more impactful from my perspective.
Totally. Yeah. And I think we could do both, right? I think that's a good idea, is passing a resolution supporting this, and then including, maybe we can also kind of, I already pretty much have that letter written that I used. And so I could write something up as kind of a both an additional and a supporting document to something like this. Other questions or feedback? I guess I'll throw it to Sarah and David. I guess how would you, if we could pass this resolution and then also say, we'll work on kind of a letter which goes maybe into a kind of elaborates a little bit on the background, and maybe send that out to the board for a final review as well.
Yeah, I'd be fine with that. But so what is the plan with the resolution, Chris? Just like, what would your action step be?
My action step would be providing this to commissioners. It would be, it's an action directed at commissioners. It's an action to say the neighborhood association supports the plan as it is, and supports the plan really in regards to the process that was developed to that plan, and to hopefully limit the impact of this third round of engagement on the plan, which really is, what I've seen from the comments is a removal of things from parks. It's a way. It's a lot of those comments are, how do we go back to what was there in the past, right? And so I think the goal of this resolution was to say we support the plan because it represents what the community wants. Yeah.
So it's a backing of the plan and the process, but not necessarily what's put forth through the different phases.
Yeah, I would just say it's a backing of the plan in the process as a way to support like the draft plan that's put together, to say, as an organization, we support, community input, we support deliberate and conscious outreach to communities who are typically underengaged in. So I think we can say that more deliberately, and I would love to say that more deliberately. And with the goal of presenting this to commissioners to have in their mind when they vote or present amendments that have come up in this last phase. Okay. Is there, I guess, does that sound like a plan of supporting this, and we can support it with an additional, I can work on an additional letter and then send that out to everybody as well?
Chris, there was a question from Sarah LR. What is the deadline for submitting a comment to CAC?
That is passed. I would say submitting a comment to the CAC is passed, and even the comment period on the plan is passed. We are in the phase that is pretty much pure engagement with commissioners via supplying them letters and things like that. So all of the open comment period time has ended. Okay. Any other?
Yeah, so if I can just jump in here, sorry guys, this is Sarah. So Chris, I think to your comment, I think that the important point is that the initial engagement really talked to the users of the park, many of whom are under-engaged in the process. So I think that all of the processes have focused on users of the park. I would say homeowners who circle a park are often still users. And it's not just all under-engaged populations are who you should go talk to, that it was directed at people who are in the parks using them for various purposes. So just to make that point.
Okay, unless anyone has any amendments that they would like to add to this, I guess I would like to put it forward, and then also with kind of the direction that we can kind of supplement this with some additional information. I'm more than willing to do that because I already have it. I've just pulled it up right now. So I can get that out to everybody and say, hey, we're going to pass this resolution supporting the plan, and then be able to supply a letter as well too, supporting the process, if everyone is comfortable with that. Okay. Could I get a motion if that's okay?
I move to pass the resolution as drafted.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Opposed? And abstentions? Okay. Thank you so much. I will draft something probably tonight and send it out to everybody tomorrow as kind of a to commissioners, the saying we passed this resolution, and here are the kind of the big reasons why. So thank you, everybody. I think we are still on track. I'm going to kick this over to you, Sarah. Maybe I'll just give it a little bit of background. I mentioned this in the beginning. We, as myself and a few other board members, and also Sarah, have been working with neighbors in the park to help support those who are currently living in the park right now. Really, actually, we have been supporting neighbors who have been supporting neighbors who are living in the park is really the best way to say it. And one of the things that came out of a meeting that we had in the park with Councilmember Jenkins and some folks from Hennepin County was folks in the park felt like there were different service organizations that were kind of coming in at different times. They didn't know who they were. They didn't know why they were there. They weren't sure if they were park board staff or anybody. And so what our plan was to pull together all of these groups into one time slot and say, and bring the trusted folks from the neighbors who have been down at MLK Park every single day, and working with folks to say, hey, these are some trusted folks that you can work with to get connected to different, whether that's mental health services, whether that's other, like we did COVID testing, we did flu shots, and then also resources in terms of like housing, jobs, bike repair, that sort of thing. And so that was the concept. It was pulled off, I think, very, very well and went really, really well. And as I mentioned in the beginning of our meeting, we've already had 6 people been able to transition out of the park into kind of more permanent, semi-permanent housing that is definitely more appropriate and humane for the winter than currently living in the park. So I guess, Sarah, I'll turn it over to you to maybe just give like a quick update of because you were the one that was there for most of the day, and yeah.
I don't have much more of an update than that. So, and I know for those of you who are on the Facebook group, Sarah Ketterling has just put out a pretty detailed report of what's happened since the event. But at the time we were there, about 25 residents were living there. Everyone by the end of the event attended except for 2 residents. One of them is a person who they'd been talking with a lot about rules of the site and what they could help him with to follow the rules better. I believe he has since been evicted, but it was an individual known instance. Do you know if that's true, Chris? Is Nick gone?
I don't know specifically about Nick. I believe so, but I don't want to say.
So anyways, everyone was there, and I would say it was an awesome day. Some people spent 5 hours talking to people between flu shots and HIV and talking about housing and reconnecting or connecting with St. Stephen's outreach teams. I learned a lot about how the system works, and everybody was super helpful, which I thought was a really interesting outcome of the event. At the end of the event, I had 6 people helping us tear down tents and load my truck with tables and saying thank you. And it was a great experience, I think, for providers and a way just to do direct outreach to the people there.
Awesome. Thanks, Sarah. And you'll see in the agenda, there is a link to an event recap. We're just trying to do these for kind of some things that are happening so that everybody's aware and we have kind of a record of these as we go forward. Are there any questions about the current kind of encampment at MLK processes moving forward, or that event particularly?
Is there a plan for the winter? I mean, are they expecting that people will stay in the parks?
No. So because of this event and because the park board representative who's in charge of all the encampments and the outreach to the encampments spent 3 or 4 hours on site talking to people, I feel like we have received as much of a firm commitment as we can get that people will not be moved. Unless the weather turns horrible, they won't be moved until at least November 1st, and that we will be given notice before they are moved. So it's been stressed by the volunteers on site that even just getting a couple days notice will help us make plans with people, will help them move with dignity and with the belongings that they have, rather than being bulldozed out of the site. So that is the goal, is that on November 1st, everyone will have housing that they can move to. There's been a number of fund collections in the neighborhood too, and the volunteers are looking at ways where they can help set up the next step for people, whether that's paying for a storage locker for someone for some new things, whether that's doing a short-term apartment rental lease or a motel rental lease until they move into another unit. So I would say from what I've seen that those funds are being handled very responsibly. We have offered as KFNA to hold those if there's a benefit. I have not heard anything more on that, Chris. But the goal is that people will be gone on November 1st into housing.
So the plan isn't just to try to put everybody into various shelters throughout the city?
No.
I mean, they're looking to do more than that.
The plan, as I hear it, is by a person's name and what they need, and finding a situation that works best for that person.
Yeah, I think that's the best way to do it, or best way to say it. Is that is what the goal of, especially the neighbors who have been working on it are. To answer your question, and Sarah answered it, but to really directly, Becky, like folks will not be in the park over the winter, sanctioned by the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board. Whether somebody kind of like sticks around, but we will not see folks living there over the winter. The park board has been explicit in saying that is not something that they are going to allow. So I think just through that event and what Sarah was mentioning, I think we are going to hopefully, and we've seen some really good transitions happen for folks moving out of parks. Brackett was just the most recent example of a very positive situation. And I think thanks to the neighbors, thanks to, Sarah and Raquel and Riza and Madeline and the other folks who are working on this, we are hopefully, and what I am really hoping for is that we are going to have a similar transition to that. So.
Do we know how many of these folks are homeless as a result of like job loss due to COVID versus like what their status was last year? Is there, just out of curiosity, is this like?
I'm pretty sure that other people know those numbers. From what I've heard, it is a mix. Some are more recently on the streets because of COVID. Some of the more extended families are on the street because of COVID. And some people are just chronic. And there are people there who are struggling with drug abuse and drug addiction and who are in a chronic situation.
Are there, like, is there a count of like how many people have access to healthcare to be able to deal with things like drug problems or mental health?
I guess it depends on what you mean by healthcare. I think some people, when they move into housing situations, health assistance is offered.
Sure.
And obviously we brought what we could to site through partners who were giving away those services for free.
Mm-hmm.
But I wouldn't say it goes much beyond that. I don't see people being concerned about COVID. They'll put on a mask if you ask them to, but they're not going around in their normal lives concerned about.
Sure. Well, even like
COVID, they would not go out of their way to get a flu shot unless you take them over and go, you should do this. I don't think they're on the level of thinking of preventative care at all.
Okay. I was just wondering, like, if there are a lot of resources even through like MACP and MA within the state, but it's always a lot of paperwork and a lot of things that need to be filled out in order to get that process going. But those resources just have to be navigated. So I didn't know if that was part of anything that has been facilitated so far.
From meeting the people, and I have not spent a lot of time there. Yeah. My impression is that things that are beyond the day or the next day, until they get housing, everything's on a day-by-day basis.
Mm-hmm.
And that's just my impression.
And I think that was a little bit part of the kind of the idea of bringing in a bunch of different kind of service providers, which a lot of them were healthcare providers, into that one day. One of the things that I had connected with personally was kind of Hennepin Healthcare, right? Who were great and have I think they have a division or a program or something that's healthcare. I think they call it healthcare for the homeless or something. Through
Hennepin County.
Yeah, so they were specifically out because that was one of my things that I thought was like, we need folks who can connect with folks to figure out what their situations are and how they can support them in connecting with some of these other healthcare services, because we know those healthcare services are out there, but it's more like connect. I think the biggest problem is connecting people with them.
Yeah, it's like, here's this stack of paper that needs to be filled out, and yeah, it's going to take a couple of hours.
Yeah, so I think there's still folks in the park. I would still like say if there are ideas or like different like resources or things, I am more, we can connect folks with the house neighbors here in our neighborhood who are kind of have those intimate connections with the folks in the park, and maybe could even help people understand a little bit what are maybe some of the specific needs around healthcare or different sort of different things. So any final questions? Sorry, I don't see who it was. David.
So one thing I was saying is oftentimes I know that folks that are in these types of terrible spots, they oftentimes have legal issues, and if they need like connection to legal resources, I'd be happy to be helpful with that. So yeah, I'd be happy. Just let me know how to do it and I'll be happy to do it.
Awesome, that's great. I'll probably send. I'll let everybody know that that's something out there. So thank you. Okay. I will, unless there's any other questions around MLK, we are just on time, which is great. Kind of jumping into the organizational conversation. This is kind of the big meat and bones, even though the other things are obviously important too. One of the things that we've I would say put a little bit on the back burner is having some of these more kind of organizational conversations. Where is KFNA where is KFNA now? Where are we going? How can we continue to thrive and survive in this pretty complex environment, both like financially and socially? And here we all are looking at each other on video. And so like, how do we move forward, right? And so this is something the executive committee has been meeting once or twice in between all of our meetings. And this is really the conversation that I think a lot of our discussions have rolled into and stuck on is how do we survive as an organization? How do we thrive as an organization? How do we do the work that we value and think is important? How do we do the work that the community values and thinks is important? And so we're butting up with a lot of different things, right, that are happening. Obviously, I'm, thinking about COVID. We talked about this in the last meeting, but the Minneapolis or the neighborhoods 2020 plan, looking at how our funding is going to change. No matter how that comes around, just to be frank, our funding is going to be significantly less than it is right now. And we need to, as an organization and as a board, need to think about how we are responding to that. And I think there's a lot of different ways that we can respond to that. I don't think it's all bad. I actually think it's like we can think about this as a positive and a reframing of the work that we do, and a reframing of how we convey the value that we have in the community, and how the community can help support that as well too. So that was the quick background that I was going to give, just to kind of say, there's all of these things that are coming together, and out of that, we have to move forward. And a part of that is understanding our current financials. We're also going to be talking about thinking about going through a strategic planning process to kind of put the frameworks in for the organization to move forward. And then thinking about what is the board's role in this, what is all of our roles in this, and how we can actively engage as board members into specific things. Because without the events, without meeting in person, I understand that it's been tough, right? Like it's been tough for us to all connect. It's been tough for us to all kind of attach to different projects, because those things just really haven't been happening in as an accessible way as they maybe have in the past. So how we can kind of create some buckets for board members to get involved in, and then create a little bit of the space in this meeting to kind of kick off those discussions and move forward. So that was kind of a little bit of a nebulous but broad setup. And so I will, I guess, is there anyone else on the executive committee wants to kind of frame in terms of this discussion? BJ, Sarah, Alice, Sarah. I think the first thing we had on the kind of the docket was just to kind of have both Alice and Sarah kind of go over the current financial situation, and then also looking at how our current financial system situation ties into the current funding model that the Neighborhoods 2020 plan has proposed for us. So I will turn it over to you two and go from there.
Sarah included a spreadsheet that was in the packet that kind of provides a lot of detail about what kind of buckets of money we have been getting and what we have on hand. I don't know, Sarah, did you want to run through that high level? Would people be interested in more explanation on that? Okay, so broadly speaking, we talked before about the council's vision on how neighborhoods will be funded going forward. And the reality is right now we spend about $107,000 a year is what our budget has been to operate and do all the programming that we have been doing and have the staff that we've had to do that. Starting possibly even next year, that will be cut dramatically to, I think, scaling back from about $28,000 to about $19,000 a year. So that's a dramatic shift. We have some funds on hand. We have unrestricted cash on hand, and we have some buckets of cash that we can draw on. There's $200,000+ in that. So given all of that, where we can operate kind of a bare bones for about 5 years. But beyond that, we would be drastically cut back. We could have maybe an office and send out an electronic newsletter and be mostly a volunteer organization. And even for those 5 years, we wouldn't be able to take advantage of doing any significant projects. We would be just kind of operating on more of a bare bones as we have been for 5 years. So that speaks to the opportunity, as Chris was saying, to think about, well, what do we need to be and what do we want to be and what does the community want us to be for 5 years? And then how are we going to create an organization that's sustainable beyond those 5 years? Because we have chosen in the past not to, as we see budget cuts happen, cut back on what we do, because if we continue to do that, we could cut ourselves into oblivion before we get to the end of the 5 years, and then the community wouldn't even know what they missed anymore because we will have cut back so drastically. So that's why we're proposing that we do a serious strategic planning exercise and engage everybody, certainly on our board as well as community members, and really this is a chance to really reach out and envision who do we want to be and how do we want to sustain ourselves into the long-term future.
Sarah, would it be helpful? I'm gonna just share my screen really quick. Maybe I'm not. Can everybody see that? Can we see that or no? No?
Yes, we can.
Okay,
I
cool.
can see it.
Okay, awesome.
Just so people know, so the spreadsheet, the Excel spreadsheet that Alice referenced is really just details of this. This is a summary so that people don't have to stare at numbers of the money that the neighborhood association has access to currently. And so if you see below, there's 3 different city contracts that we hold. And the amount of money remaining in each of those contracts and what we have to pay back to the city, or the work we have to do at the end of those that we won't get paid for when we close out those contracts. That gets to the point of Alice's comment that everything you see in our bank account is not necessarily KFNA's money to spend because some of it has been given on advance. So in the future, I would say read through this, and if you have questions on how KFNA's money currently works, just feel free to ask. This was just meant to be a super easy overview and an analysis of sort of the bare bones of what it takes to run the organization as it currently is. As Alice had said, you know, and this is what we're going through in the Neighborhood 2020, is whatever happens next year, the neighborhood's probably facing anywhere between a 25% if they raise the money in up to a 66% cut in annual support from the city of Minneapolis. And so leading back to the document that Chris had shared, which was titled, I don't remember what you called it, Chris. There were 3 buckets of work that we're asking board members to be engaged in. One is fundraising. One is starting with the review of the capital or the direct mail campaign for this year, and then looking at fundraising and event fundraising in the year to come, especially if we can't hold events in person. So laying out a plan for that into the future. Another was joining the strategic planning team with Chris and BJ and looking at how the board would enter into a strategic planning process, ideally as soon as January, and ending before the next annual meeting. And the third bucket that we're asking board members to be involved with is a board recruitment team led by Sarah Cheetah that focuses on what skills do we need on the board, who do we know, what representation do we want, and then seeking out those people from the community to serve on the board, both for the open seat that Christina just left, and also for the annual meeting, which would happen typically in March or April of 2021.
So I just shared the screen with those 3 buckets. Maybe this is a good transition time to maybe kind of, this was the third phase of what I was talking about kind of in the beginning was, you know, thinking about the finances, thinking about a strategic plan, and thinking about how we kind of engage all of us in I think it's a little bit of the executive team, the committee's role to figure out ways that we can get all board members involved and engaged in different things. And these were kind of the 3 most immediate needs that we had that Sarah just went over. So I guess maybe let's do this. Let's first, is there any kind of questions on this? I know this is kind of a broad discussion, but before we jump off of finances, are there any specific questions that people have on kind of our current financial situation? Okay. Alice, do you maybe just want to talk a little bit about fundraising? Maybe we'll each go through one of these buckets. Sarah covered them quickly. Maybe just to kind of like give a little bit of your perspective. What we have is these 3 buckets, and then we have kind of executive committee members, the different ones. So.
Right. So the fundraising is basically, we get together and we just do some short-term thinking about what we're going to do this year. And we're to the point where we'll want to get out sometime early next month, a year-end letter, and to ask a community again to donate, which is something that we've done every year in the past. And what we want to start engaging the board more in this process than we have been in a couple of ways. And this is something that I'm sure you all are involved in, other nonprofits, and you're maybe seeing this, that the board gets engaged in writing emails or letters or making phone calls to thank people for their contributions. And that may seem like a small thing, but I noticed this year when I got a couple of calls from organizations that I donated to, that I was actually pleasantly surprised. And I I could feel myself being more engaged with those organizations because of that conversation. So I think that's a positive, and so that's something we'll want, I think, the whole board to be engaged in. And then also, most boards ask that board members contribute something, and contribute something that you define as meaningful to KFNA, because that really demonstrates, as we're raising money from other people, that the board is engaged and the board believes in this. So there's not an amount that is expected at all. It could be $5, it could be $500, whatever you see as a meaningful and appropriate gift. But the more we can get the board engaged and leading this, the more successful we'll be, obviously. And then long-term, just working on new solutions and new strategies for fundraising. So the sky can be the limit. And so I think, this is a chance for us to get creative.
Awesome. Thanks, Alice. Is there any, I guess I'll also just say that what we're going to be asking board members to do is to kind of commit to one of these buckets at the end of this. So it's either going to be, I think, there's two or three kind of adding on to each team. So are there any questions in terms of kind of this like fundraising bucket? Or any additional comments?
Can I add the plug-in that we have passed direct mail letters to work off of, and I've already done a draft for this year. And so not saying that there's no work involved, but part of the challenge with fundraising, I think, in Minnesota is people don't like to ask for money. And so we're really looking at, you guys all give to KFNA because you care about it and you're giving your time. And so it's learning how to express that to the community. And that's the fun part. You care enough to give your time. And so asking other people to do the same should be a fun and fairly painless thing to do.
Great. I will, if there's no questions there, I'll maybe jump to kind of the strategic planning bucket. I've kind of said a lot on this already. I don't know if there's anything, I can't see you, BJ, but I don't know if there's anything you wanted to add, BJ, in terms of this, but I think it's, it's all the things that I kind of went through. It's, we're at an intersection. We need to figure out how we are going to move forward. And I think a strategic plan is a really, really valuable thing for that. So we're looking for people to kind of work through the items that are outlined there, and then help kind of transition this process going forward. So
the only thing that I would say is that, for people who have never done a strategic plan before or find kind of that big picture intimidating, we will be working with a consultant. So it won't be you doing the bulk of that figuring out. We'll be working with someone to figure out what our values, what our goals, where we see KFNA being in the next year to the next 5 years. And so don't be, it seems like a big ask, but don't be intimidated by that. We're really just using your brain for resources on, how you envision this board moving forward.
Great. And then maybe I'll kick it over to Sarah T. To kind of talk a little bit about the recruitment part of it.
Yeah. So recruitment, both in the short term in terms of seating someone to fill the vacancy from Christina's departure from the board, so that we can have a full board for the strategic planning process, as well as thinking about our next full round of elections and planning for that. So this would be taking the board expectations in application form, which I think there were a considerable amount of edits that were made to it in this last round, for this last round of recruitment. But certainly we want to take a good look at that and see if there's any updates or edits that we want to make there. And then it would be publicizing the current vacancy answering any sort of questions that people might have about that, and then making a recommendation to the board in terms of seating that person. Thinking about, with a vacancy, thinking about what that would look like, because with a one-off vacancy like this, it's up to the board to seat someone. And if we have, say, multiple applications, how we would handle that. Would we vote as a board? Would we make a recommendation? Do we do ranked choice voting? That type of thing. So be working through those details and then coming up with a longer term recruitment plan to recruit people to run at the time of the annual meeting. So last year we had done some door knocking and distributing flyers around the neighborhood. We did some individual outreach. We also had some house parties to publicize the board. I don't think we're going to be doing house parties for this round. So we need to be creative in thinking about how to reach out to people in the neighborhood. Let's see what else. And then thinking about the annual meeting and when that might be, what our structure might be, and making sure that people who are elected and join the board have all of the information that they need in order to be set up for success, have a good understanding of the history of the organization, the expectations, getting connected to meaningful work on the board and things like that.
Thank you, Sarah. So I guess what I would ask for right now would be maybe if we can just, if there's any questions around those specific buckets for the rest of the meeting, unless I'm forgetting anything. Our goal was to kind of talk broadly about these kind of like key things. And then to say, and then for board members, everybody here, and I think we are missing Derek and Aiden. Is that correct? Yeah,
yep, okay. Those are the only two missing.
Cool. To get, I think we have to get three folks into each of these buckets. And so if you have a strong preference around what you would like to do, and then ideally what we're going to be doing is to kind of say, we're going to take 10 minutes of this meeting, do breakout groups to kind of start those conversations and kick them off. Because I think sometimes the hardest thing is like getting together for the first time. So saying like how, quickly breaking out into a breakout room right now with, whether it's 3 or 4 people and say, okay, yep, this is how we're going to move forward. This is a rough plan. Maybe we're going to get together or meet in a week or something like that. So I guess I will maybe leave it up to everyone on how they want to voice their opinions. I hadn't really thought about this part, but if people have strong preferences, if they want to maybe throw them into the chat and we can just start breaking that out. And if something is not very popular, we might have to move some folks around, but I'll just open it up. Any preferences, ideas, questions, concerns? I see some folks are throwing some stuff into the chat right now.
Yeah.
BJ, is it possible for you to pull those out and try to start figuring out where we're at?
Yeah, right now it looks like not everyone has answered, but it looks like we have only one person interested in recruitment. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So we have 2 people that haven't responded yet. So so it looks like Jerome, you by default being interested in recruitment will be on recruitment with Sarah. And we are looking for potentially one more person into that group. And it could be one of the people that are not here today will get voluntold to be working on that in just being absent from this. So then we have a couple of people that are interested in different things. So we need at least one person on to strategic planning, if not two. So Chris Hung, you will be strategic planning. And Mike was fundraising, so we will put you on fundraising. And then that leaves Dave, David, and Becky left to be placed. So looking at that, it looks like the three of you all had the same.
Go to fundraising?
We would need at least
Or-
one, and David said he'd be interested in doing recruiting. It'd be a great way to meet
I
new
think
neighbors.
Dave should do fundraising.
David or Dave?
Dave, Sarah.
Should do
Can
fundraising?
I say a quick word about recruitment? In response to your comment, David, so I would think about this as not necessarily thinking about it within your own network, but that how can we do outreach more broadly in the neighborhood that might include with your network, but it would be going beyond that. And so I don't think that we have to think like we, need to know all our neighbors or anything like that. It's just thinking strategically about how to get the word out throughout the neighborhood. If that helps at all.
Yeah, I mean, in that case, I'm more of a visionary than I'm a terribly shy person generally. Surprising though, but I am an introvert and I don't know my neighbors very well. So, but strategically, I'm happy to help out. So, I'd be happy to. I'm happy to serve where needed, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, hold on.
So Chris, because you started the meeting, you're the only person who has controls to put people in small group.
Yep.
Just
so
as
I'm-
a heads up. And there
Yep.
is an option to put people
Yep.
in specific groups.
Yep. So if BJ, if we're finalized, if you read those groups back to me, I can assign people.
Yep, so we've got 4 in fundraising, I think, and correct me if I'm wrong here. So fundraising, we have Dave, Alice, Mike, and Becky. And again, correct me if I miswrote this. And then recruiting, we have David, Sarah, Cheetah, and Jerome. And then strategic planning, Chris, BJ. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's everyone.
Okay. It's not letting me put myself in a room, but I'm going to send everybody into their rooms. Okay. Sorry if I got it wrong. And Sarah, I'm not going to put you in a room. So maybe, I don't know. You can.
How much time do we have, Chris?
Yeah, we should do this for the next 10 minutes.
Okay.
So 8:50.
And before we jump into rooms, Sarah, Cheetah, you have the documents from last year? From the recruitment piece?
Yes.
If you want to share that.
Yes.
And then just as follow-up for all of these groups, I am available to do whatever you need. I'm available to meet with you. I'm available to come to every meeting. I'm available to give you feedback on this stuff. So you just need to let me know what your schedule is and what you need from me.
Okay, yeah, we'll want to connect with you with getting the letter that you've drafted and walking us through maybe how it's worked and what you've seen, we've done before. So I think for fundraising, you'll be very valuable. I'm sure you're valuable for all of it, but.
Yeah,
Alice, do you want Sarah in your breakout room right now just to have that kickoff conversation?
I think it would be helpful. Yes,
I got it.
if that's okay.
Okay, cool. Thanks, everybody. Hopefully this works. BG, you're on mute. I can tell if you're talking. It brings you in on mute, I think.
Damn it. You should all have an invite to Friday the 23rd at 1 o'clock, KFNA Strategic Planning Meeting number 1.
Thank you.
And I figured an hour is enough for this kickoff meeting, and then we can set the future meetings at the end of each of those meetings.
I wish we could do these meetings like, man, the meetings were so much better when we could have when we all went and got chips and margaritas.
I like coming into that conversation.
Chips and margaritas. The good old days.
That's right.
Okay, I think we got everybody back, right? I did it. So in the last, hopefully that was fruitful. I guess just to give a little context, we set kind of a next meeting date, talked really broadly. So hopefully everybody feels like they're ready to kind of move forward. And I guess my expectation for the different groups, and I think maybe speaking for the executive committee too, would just be that, we're coming back. Some of these are going to be more short term, some of them is going to be a little bit longer, but that we maybe have report out from each group at board meetings. So that'd be great, just so everybody knows where we're at and how different groups can support other groups, because I know that there's going to be kind of different weights and different kind of timings with all of this. So in the last 3 minutes, kind of our community member updates / shares, 1 minute each. I think we are going to be able to squeeze it in. So I maybe should change this up because Sarah has to go first every time, but Sarah Cheetah, can you please go first?
I suppose. So real quick, so just think the follow-up to the strategic planning, I think I'm excited about it. I think it's a big undertaking. And so I'm hoping that we can just make sure that we kind of voice any concerns or reservations or hopes, that type of thing that we have for that process, just as in an ongoing open dialogue amongst board members. In terms of my community update, yeah, I'm just thinking about the next time that we meet. It's going to be about a week after the election. And I feel very uncertain about what that is going to look like, and very much thinking about KFNA's role, regardless of the election results, in how we can be supportive to our neighborhood and what type of resources or space we might want to hold and be thinking about and being prepared for. Thank you. BJ.
I am excited about Tane coming back and potentially doing something with the neighborhood association. I think, it's been such a weird year for anyone who was new to the board this year that we have actually never met in person. And so I think it'd be a great way, Zoom is fine. Zoom, we're getting by, but I feel like a conversation that goes beyond the board meeting, I think would be very welcomed, on getting to have conversations with people beyond kind of just very matter-of-fact board things. Other exciting thing, I'm cautiously waiting for Petite Léon to open. They said they were going to be opening in October, and it is October. And that is a block from my house. So I'm very much looking forward to that opening. And Mike is up next.
Mike.
Oh, here we go. So actually here, just give me 1 second. Can someone else go next?
David?
Yep. I'm excited to see all of you. I feel like I've been gone. It's been a busy couple months here at the Searle household. I am looking forward to the election because we'll have our tent down in King Park. And I've been looking at the spots filling up in the Sign Up Genius, which is awesome, and figuring out which sweet spots I'll take. I'm also excited because we got the bituminous repavement here on First Avenue. And so hoping to learn more about the future of the bike path on First and the short-term plan there too. so it seems like things are moving in a good direction, and so I am excited for November 3rd because of the tent.
David R.
I'm excited for November 3rd for other reasons. Yeah, no, I had a gutting professional, I lost in a published case, my pro bono case, before the Minnesota Court of Appeals. They're wrong. But it gives me an opportunity, and I think that we have a big opportunity here to go petition the Supreme Court for review, which I've been working on diligently the past couple weeks, and I got 2 more weeks before I have to petition. My petition's due to the Minnesota Supreme Court. I really do think that my position is right on the law, and I'm hoping the Supreme Court will agree. And if I win before the Supreme Court, it'll have a big impact for individuals on pretrial release in the state of Minnesota. But it sucked to lose before the Court of Appeals. So yeah, I don't know. That's the march goes on, but that was the big thing for me this month.
Awesome. Thanks. Jerome?
Yeah, I'm excited about, I was going to say election day, but I feel like it's going to be election week. Hopefully not too many more days than that. I'm excited about the opportunity to engage in different ways. I think at a bare minimum, I do vote in every election, but this year I'm trying to find ways to, through my work and just through my own civic activity, to engage in this process as much as possible. And I'm excited to see just how many people are thinking about this election the way that I am. Not just about like the choices in front of them, but about being more active and taking it seriously and talking to other people about it. There just seems to be a different level of engagement that gives me optimism, not just about the outcome, but about the future of civic engagement and the democratic process overall. So we'll see how it all goes. A lot could go real crazy between now and mid-November, but right now that's what I'm excited about.
Awesome. Thanks. Mike, you ready to go?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited about, I want to get through this thing, because it could be another month or so of potential nail biting beyond that. So, just trying to get fortified for what may come after that. But also was excited about the breakout that we had just a minute ago on the fundraising piece too. And that was, I think we've got a few different things we could put together and hopefully get some action items put into place after election.
Awesome. Thanks. Alice?
Let's see. Well, the neighbors have been, we're continuing to work on sending out our postcards and getting everybody to vote and signs on our yards. And I agree the engagement is kicked up to an even higher level than it's been. It'll be interesting to see how Kingfield turnout is. I'm guessing it's going to be really high. Yeah, I think I'm not sure I'm going to relax till January. So the election is just the beginning of all the hard work we're still going to have to do, and getting the country back together again. We have a great group on the fundraising committee, actually, a bunch of really creative, energetic ideas. So I'll work with Sarah to get a meeting going on that as soon as we can, and some follow-up meetings, but there's a lot to be excited about.
Awesome. Thanks. Chris H.
What am I excited about? I'm excited about the future of First Avenue. Right now, it's pretty unclear. I don't know. I am cautiously optimistic about improvements and traffic calming and all that good stuff for First Avenue. And I'm also very encouraged by the early voting numbers. My ballot has been accepted, so I'm really happy about that.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Chris. For me, I'll give kind of some quick updates. The Streets Committee held an open house, I guess you would call it, with the city about the Lindale Whittier bikeway. So that bikeway is moving, and kind of as Chris has hinted at, is going to be on First, or not, sorry, on First. It's going to be on Blaisdell, not First. So there'll be a two-way bikeway on Blaisdell. The details are getting worked out right now. The redevelopment for Grand Avenue is approved. So Grand Avenue is going to have chicanes in it, which are kind of like these bump outs into the street, which will make cars move, which will hopefully slow down. As someone who lives on Grand and watches people go 60 miles an hour in front of my house, it is going to be very exciting and interesting to see. And then also redevelopment has been moving forward on a lot of different stuff. What I'm really, really excited about and what I'm hoping going to be working with Sarah and maybe even some other neighborhoods on is a scorecard for helping neighbors, helping redevelopment, helping our community evaluate development in terms of what we value in development and how different development projects kind of weigh those things that we value. So there's some really, really great examples of these that have been put out by the Alliance that different neighborhood organizations and different groups have used. And so if you're interested in helping in that process, we're going to be doing hopefully doing a community engagement kind of with the broader community, but really excited to start that. I'm really excited to have a concrete thing to be able to evaluate the changes that are happening in our neighborhood and hopefully shape some of the changes that are happening in our neighborhood. So, and then Becky?
Yeah, I'm excited to be at MLK Park on actual election day. It'll be interesting to see if there's anybody left that still needs to vote that day. So I am honestly terrified of the upcoming few weeks and what's going to happen afterwards, but I am committed to picking up my kids' friends at the University of Minnesota campus on Friday and every day until the election and taking them all to early voting so they don't have any excuses, even if I have to buy them lunch, which may be illegal. So yeah, so that's my next plan for getting more people to vote.
Awesome, thank you. And then Sarah LR, last but not least.
You can buy your kids' friends lunch. I don't think that's called bribery. I'm super excited because I'm going to leave this meeting and go proof the newsletter. We haven't put out a newsletter for 10 months, but we are doing our joint election issue with Lindale. I'm very excited for it. One of the greatest pieces, David, I should have tapped you on it, is I got to research the Minnesota Supreme Court and put a story together on why it is important to evaluate judges in voting and how you do that when they're non-party related. And so that was a super interesting story to put together. And on that note, Sarah's been in the conversation and Chris as well. We're working on a school board at-large candidate conversation or forum that will happen in probably 2 weeks. I'll be posting out a survey, possibly tonight, tomorrow morning. So if you have questions that you want to ask either of the at-large candidates, please look for that and put your questions into that. Probably a Google form.
And Sarah, that's a great point, and I'll just put a plug in. Vote Paul Thyssen. Don McDonald's insane. View.
Wait, cut off the recording.
Yeah, I was gonna say I don't know if we can do that, but hey, you're the lawyer. You're the one that tells me I can't do stuff. So
flip over your ballot. That's all. I'll say. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we are a couple minutes over, so thanks everybody for holding on for a few more minutes, and it was really great to see you. Thanks, good meeting, and I'm looking forward to all the work we're going to do over the next couple months with all this stuff. So thank you again.
Thanks, bye.
Thanks all. Hey, Chris, do you know how to upload the video?
Yeah, hold on. Let me stop it right here for a sec before.
Okay.